Hello folks, in this video I'm going to show you how to build an event manager using the ultimate native PHP framework, Trongate v2. So here's what you're going to get, something like this, and you'll be able to add an event title. You'll be able to add a location, and then we're going to have these beautiful little date picker things here where you can choose months, even different years and all of that, and times as well, of course. So I'll show you how to do all of that. And I have to say, these things look really, really cool on mobile devices. Now, I'm trying my best to show you my mobile phone here. I'm not too good at filming this sort of stuff. But in any event, it's going to be a super cool little date picker. Of course, you're going to be able to edit and delete and all of that stuff. It's all here, and here we go. Oh, by the way, I'm going to upload this. In fact, I have uploaded this by the time you watch this video. This events module, it's being uploaded to GitHub. You'll find a link in the description. Now, I am going to be using the Trongate framework, the framework with the logo that changes every 5 minutes. But we're calling this a native PHP framework. And what that means is we're not going to have any composer stuff. There's not going to be any packages stuff. There's none of the PSR shenanigans, no command line stuff. In fact, we're not even going to have any JavaScript. There's not going to be any AI, apart from at the very end. I'll use it for comments and things. But it's basically just the purest form of PHP that you're ever going to find on YouTube, I think. Certainly for a tutorial like this. So that's what we mean by native PHP. Super fast, super robust, very stable, and hopefully very easy. Okay, so here we go. Alright kids, now just to let you know, I am using XAMPP here on my Mac computer. Some people like to use WAMP, LAMP, XAMPP. Somebody mentioned a thing called DDev. I'd never even heard of that one. But whatever works for you, hallelujah, and 3 cheers for you. But I'm just going to use this, okay? Now, the opening salvo for this little video is to open up the browser here, and I'm going to navigate to the Trongate repo on GitHub. And what we're going to do is get this here, which is Trongate v2, onto our computer. Now you can click on the green button and you can download as zip. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But as for me, well, you know me, I am an intellectual these days, so I'm going to open up the terminal. And if you're lucky enough to have Git on your computer, you can do something like this. I'm going to cd, so change directory, and I'm going to go where the websites live. It sounds like the worst children's novel ever. But we're going to go where the websites live. For me, it's applications. XAMPP, htdocs, and then we hit return. Okay, so I've navigated to htdocs. The next step is I'm going to type git clone, and then I'm going to copy this little address here, paste in. Now this is the important part. You want to do a space and then have a name for the directory. Okay, so I'll call this one events underscore app, and then I'll just hit return. Okay, so it's chucking it into htdocs as fast as that. And that, my friend, is the only time that there's going to be any command line shenanigans in this tutorial. We're not going to be using any packages stuff. We're not even going to use any JavaScript. This is native PHP. Now, I actually downloaded that to htdocs. So if I go to localhost and then / events app, hit return, You can see I've got a nice page here. I'm somewhat zoomed in. I'm going to be zooming in and zooming out quite a lot. I hope you don't mind. But if you have a page something like this, it means that the thing has worked. So the very first thing we want to do once we have Trongate onto our computer is open up our text editor and do a little bit of configuration. So I'm going to open up this text editor. I'm playing around these days with one called Z. I'm not sure if I'll like it or not, but let me know what you think. Here's htdocs and there's events app. Okay, so here it is here. And the interesting thing about this Z text editor, well, for one, it's written in Rust, so it's very, very fast. But another thing that's kind of interesting is that the team behind this particular text editor, they did a whole lot of research and came to the conclusion that colored highlighting is actually not good for productivity, especially if you're doing long coding sessions, like 8 hours, you know? So there's a whole lot of research into this, and I won't bore you with it just now, but the main gist of it is that they believe that having just one color tone here is actually good for productivity. Kind of interesting, right? So I'll try this video with this text editor and let me know if you like this text editor or if maybe we should try something else, right? I've actually used Sublime since about 2012, so this is a big deal, you know. Anyway, into config here, and I'm going to set the base URL, so it's events app, something like that, okay? And I'll save and close, and then into the database, same story here. The name of my database is going to be events app, and save and close. Now you may need to change these. I'm sort of lucky though, I don't have to do that. And now let me go into PHP MyAdmin. So keep your eye on the top left hand side. It's where all of the action's going to be. So I'm going to go to databases and I'm going to create a database called events_app. I'll keep this the same. Click create. And I'm going to have a table called events. It's going to have 4 columns. And I'll just create. And the columns are going to be as follows. It's going to be slow down DC. Slow down. Okay. It's going to be ID, which is an integer, auto increment, primary key. We're going to have event name. That's going to be a variable character of 100. I'm going to have event location. Look at these handy autocompletes. It's as if I've had a sneaky test run. Anyway, that's going to be a variable character of 100. And the last one is going to be event start. So this is going to be the date and time when our events start. So that's going to be a date time column. There it is right there. Okay, date time. So let's save that. There you go. And there is our first table. Now, we're going to have an admin panel here that lets us manage events. To access the admin panel, I'm going to go to the base URL and then tg-admin. You can see that it's found some SQL, and so I'm going to view the SQL and run the SQL. And if I go back to the database here, you can see that what it's done is it's given us some tables like user levels and tokens and different users and whatnot, okay? So that's what was happening here. And now you can see it's saying, please delete the file, blah, 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 blah. So let's do that. And it's inside Trongate administrators. There it is. So setup.sql, I'm just going to delete. There you go. And now if we click OK, now we go to tg-admin. Now, just to let you know, if I go back to the home page, the next time that I navigate to tg-admin, it's going to take us straight here, okay? So, the username is going to be admin, and the password is also going to be admin, and we'll log in. Now, by all means, do feel free to, change your details and change your password and everything. It's absolutely fine. Highly recommended. And by the way, I'm zoomed in a bit, so I apologize if it looks crazy. But what I'm going to do is add a link onto this left-hand section here. So to do that, I'm going to go into the templates module. I'm going to go to views, admin.php. Now, it's possible that the design has changed, so I don't want to get too, what's the word here? Pernickety. I'm not going to start shouting line numbers and stuff. I'm just going to find somewhere, maybe here. This feels kind of good. And I'm just going to have a little link that says manage events. And it's going to go to events/manage. And I'm going to save and close. Okay, so on the top left hand side, you can see a little link. Now, you may have to look around and maybe the design has changed. Maybe you'll have to fish around and find somewhere that works for you. But this kind of works for me. And it's this manage events thing. So if we click on it, you can see that it's going to events/manage, and that's pretty cool. Now, what did I do with my left dock? Here it is. Okay, so we're going to create a module called events. So it's a new folder. It's called events, and it's going to contain a controller file called events.php. Now, this is going to contain a class, a Trongate class called events. So class events extends Trongate, and I'm going to have a little public method called manage. Now, if I echo hi, save, and refresh, you can see on the top left hand side here that it says hi. So we can do something better than this, as Chris Tarrant used to say on TV. Anyone from the UK knows what I'm talking about. Anyway, I'm going to say data is this, and I'm going to say model, and let's just say get events. Now, hold on a minute. Data. Let me just do that again. I was thinking about British TV for a minute. All right, data is square brackets. I'll do it this way, right? Okay, so events is assigned to this model get events. That's what we're talking about. Now, let's make a model file here. So a new file called events_model.php. And again, I'll do a little PHP class. So it's going to be class events_model extends model. That's how we do this one, right? And we're going to say get events. And this is going to fetch the events from the database. So I'm going to say events is this db get. Now I'll order by event start, and that will be from the events database table, and we'll return the events. Okay, so it's going to query the database and it's going to return an array. So that's what that's doing. Now let's also say view module is assigned to events and view file is assigned to manage. So I'm now going to call on the templates module. Inside the templates module, I'll just show you. There's a method called admin. Here it is here. And it displays an admin template. So what we're going to do, I'm going to call upon admin, and pass in the data. So let's save and refresh, and we get something like this. Now there's actually two mistakes with this page. The first mistake is that the view file is missing. So I'm going to go to my events module here and create a new folder called views, and all of the view files pertaining to events are going to be inside here. So let's have a new file called manage.php. Now there's not any template engines or anything here because, of course, as I'm sure you know, PHP is a template engine. At least that was the idea when it was made, you know. So I'm going to do a little h1 tag. I'm going to say manage events, and then I'm going to have a link here inside a paragraph that's going to go to events create new event. There we go. Save and refresh. Now I'm going to make this link a button. The way that we do this is we pass in a third argument that's an array, and I'm just going to say class. There's other ways of doing this syntax, by the way, but I'll just go with this one. Class is button, and then another class of alt. Okay, so save, refresh, and there you go. Okay, now I said that there was two faults with this page. I wonder if you can guess what the other fault is. Any ideas? Well, the answer is that this is wide open. And because this is on an admin panel, we really want to make it so that people have to be logged in order to access this. So to achieve that, I'm going to say this, and I'm going to load Trongate security. Everything in Trongate is a module. So here's Trongate security, and it's got a little method called makeSureAllowed. Now, if you call makeSureAllowed and you keep everything empty, so you don't pass anything in, then it's going to assume that you're trying to access the admin panel, and it's going to make sure that you've logged in, okay? So that means that we can just say makeSureAllowed. Simple as that. And can you believe it? The page is now secure. Pretty cool, pretty cool. All right, just be aware, mind you, that when you're on dev mode, it's not very strict. It will let you in, okay? So that stuff really kicks in when you launch, and maybe you'll change this to live, okay? Just in case anybody says you're still able to log in, right? Okay, so this is the page secure. I think I'll tighten it up a wee bit. And there we go. Now, let's click on create new event. You can see that it's going to events/create. So let's build a little create method here. Now this one, again, it's in the admin panel, so I'm going to call makeSureAllowed, and I'm going to attempt to read an update ID from the URL. So the update ID is segment 3, and it's going to be an integer. This is going to convert it to an integer. Okay, so just to show you what's happening, if I var dump this update ID, you can see that it says integer of 0. And if I go to the 1 to 3rd segment and pass in a number like 88, you can see it's reading the number here, okay? So that's how this is going to work. And it means that we can use this for both creating records and editing records. Now, I'm going to say submit is post submit. This will become important later on. And I'm going to do a little if statement that will probably confuse me just as much as it's going to confuse you. I'm going to say if, and there's going to be two conditions, right? So if something or two little pipe symbols, something else. So what's the first condition going to be? Well, if submit is equivalent to submit with an uppercase S. Now, this maybe doesn't make sense just now, but later on we're going to have a form. The form button is going to have a name of submit and a value of submit, and this is going to be useful when it comes to repopulating forms, okay? So we'll have that, or now the other condition is if update ID is equivalent to 0. Data is this model get data from post. All right. So back to the model file here. I'm going to say public function get data from post. Now this is going to take some form fields that come from our events table here. So you kind of have to imagine a form, right? And we're going to build up a data array. And our form fields are going to be event name. Now that's going to be assigned to post, and then in parenthesis, event name, comma, true. Post is a little function that comes with Trongate. It fetches posted variables, and if the posted variables don't exist, it returns an empty string. Return true, all that does is a little bit of space normalization. For example, supposing, and I'll zoom you in, suppose we've got a string that is like this, hello, and loads of spaces and world, okay? Well, what true does is it removes space from here, it removes space from here, and then it takes all of this and it simplifies, reduces it to one space. Now this is called space normalization, okay? So it's doing space normalization, a little bit of trimming, and no big deal, all right? So we'll get the posted event name. Then we've got our next field is event location. There it is there. And then the last field is event start. Okay, so there we go. We are fetching the values, and then we're just going to return the data. Now, the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to have a headline. So the data headline, I'll use a ternary operator here. So I'm going to say if the update ID is 0, then the headline is going to be create event. Otherwise, it's going to be update event. Now, this is just a fancy way of doing an if-else statement. You can write a full if-else statement if you like, it's no big deal. Now, I'm going to have a view file with a form. So let me say data form location is string replace. Now I'm going to replace /create with /submit. And I'm going to do that to the current underscore URL. Now this is a little function that comes with the framework, and it gives us, that's right, the current URL. Ding, 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 ding. So that's going to give us a form location, and congratulations, I know that you figured that out. Now the next thing is going to be view module. So the name of the module is events, and then we'll say view file, and the view file is going to be create. So now we're just going to load up templates again, load up admin, and pass in the data. Okay, so here we go. And no surprises, it's looking for the view file. That's exactly what we're going to make right now. So into the views directory, it's called create.php. And we'll have, now give me a moment, there's a thing I need to do with this text editor. This gets Emmet working, by the way, in case you're wondering. I'm sure there's better ways. Just ignore me. You know, I'm still trying to figure out this text editor. Anyway, I'm going to echo the headline. Save and refresh, and there you go. And now I'm going to have a card element. Now, you don't need to do this, but I think it looks nice. So I'm going to say dot card, and then dot card heading, and I'll say event details. And how about a little dot card body? And when I do dot card here and then hyphen body, I'm pressing tab, you know. So that's what Emmet does. It's called Emmet, and it's just a little plugin that you can get for some of the text editors, and it makes it faster and easier to write HTML. Okay, we are going to have a form. So we're going to say, now let's just echo form open, and we'll pass in the form location. And then I'm going to echo form close before I forget. And that's going to give us form closing tags. It's actually going to give us a CSRF token, a little bit of security, but you don't need to worry about that. It's all automatic and everything is fine. Now, let me just say echo form label. This is going to be event name. And then we'll have a little form input. So it's called event name, and we're going to pass in the event name. And then I'm going to have a little event attribute. Now, this is just going to be an array of key value pairs. There's different ways of writing these, of course, but I'm going to go with this technique here just to confuse everybody. And I'm going to say placeholder is assigned to event name ... And I'm also going to add autocomplete is assigned to off. Now, you don't need to do that, but it's just something I'm going to do for this video. Okay, now if we save and refresh, you can see we've got a nice card and we've got a form field with a placeholder. And everything is kind of cool. So let's have another one of these. But this one's going to be for event location. So here we go. Oops. Event location. And it's event location. Event location. Now I'll call this location. I'm trying to select. There we go. I'll call this location attribute. And let's just save, refresh, and there we go. Okay, perfect. So now we'll do the last one. It's going to be another form label. Whoops. And it's going to be event start, okay? Now, this is going to be a little not a drop down, a pop-up calendar that we want with a date time picker. Now, I'm going to say echo form date time local. And I'm going to pass in the name of event start. I'm going to pass in any value of event start, but I'm not going to bother with any other things here. This will be just fine. Now, if we save and refresh, you can see that we've got a little form field thing here, and everything is fantasticola. All right. Now, this is a good time, I think, to take just a little time out to talk a wee bit about pop-ups and documentation and stuff like that. So, in the past, when we were doing these types of pop-up calendars in web development, many of us would use things like jQuery and all sorts of third-party libraries to achieve this. And in Trongate v1, I remember that I actually personally, this was just before AI, by the way, and I personally wrote a whole bunch of JavaScript code with date pickers and time pickers and date range pickers and all sorts of stuff, you know. That was really difficult because not only was it a lot of JavaScript and stuff like that, but there were other problems. For example, I happen to be in the UK, right? And here in the UK, we write dates, something like this, 23rd of March, something like that. That's how we write dates in the UK, all right? But over there in the USA, they do something different. I think they do that. Do they even say the TH? Tell me, American people, I don't know. But they do the thing differently, right? And let's not even get started on places like Japan and France and Germany. Everybody, I suppose, expresses dates differently. And in the past, this was a huge, huge challenge for developers. But now, thanks to modern HTML, we can use things like form date time local. I think I'd like to show you the docs here because it's worth looking at, right? So there's a whole chapter on working with dates and times. Here it is here. And it really goes through everything you need to know. Now, I created these docs myself. One of the things that I didn't want people to do was have to have them run around here, there, and everywhere if something was being referenced. So in the docs, here's our form date time local, and we can just click on this. I call these feature refs, you know. So if you find a little function or something and you say, oh, what does that do? You can click on it and it will tell you exactly what the function or method expects. It will tell you what it does. In this case, it's giving you a little example of what you get. It gives you some best practices. It tells you about the parameters, what's returned. It's all here. And there's even multiple examples. I am so proud of the Trongate framework documentation. And you'll see this anywhere you go. So for example, here's a page on form input fields. We've used form label, right? So remember we were using form label. So in the documentation, if you say, what does form label do? You can just see these things everywhere. They're called feature refs, and you can just click. And there you go. So everyone gets the full kit and caboodle. The function, is it a function header we call it? Or a function signature? Anyway, you see all of the parameters, the return value, multiple examples, and I'm just so happy with this, right? Forgive me for bragging, but I just want to show you where this stuff's coming from, okay? I do not want to be typing stuff and people say, well, what's he doing there? Where does that come from? So now you know. Now you know. So the particular thing that we've got is this date time local, okay? Now, what this does is it generates, you can see the code here commented out. It generates a form input field, but with a type of date time hyphen local. And what this does is it's going to format the date and time in a manner that is in alignment with your computer, your browser actually. So people in America, you're going to have the date and the time in a way that's useful for you. I'm in Scotland, so I'm going to get this. And wherever you may be, it's hopefully going to present this little calendar in a way that makes sense for you. It's a very, very cool thing, okay? So now you know about that. Oh, and by the way, There's also a really good reference section. Can I just quickly show you? If you're in a hurry, Trongate reference guide. It's very fast. It's the place to go. So we can go to, for example, helpers. We can go to form helpers. And if you scroll down, can you see it? There it is there. Form date time local. And it's just another very fast, no-nonsense way of figuring out how stuff works, okay? All right. So, as I was saying, we have this beautiful little pop-up calendar here. It looks fantastic on mobile devices. Now I'm going to do the submit buttons. I'll say buttons because we'll have two buttons here, right? I'm going to have a div with a class of text center, something like that. And then in here, I'm going to have a link. I'll say anchor. Now this is going to go to events manage. And I'm just going to say cancel. And we can turn this into a button by passing in an array with a class of button, alt, and save. Okay, so now we've got a nice little cancel button here. And the next thing we'll do is we'll add a form submit button. So the name is submit and the value is submit with an uppercase S. And there you go. Now, let's fill out a few of these values. Something like this. And if we hit submit, you can see it's going to events/submit. So, back to the controller file. We're going to make another little method here. It's called submit. And we're still in the admin panel. So I'll call this make sure allowed here so that it's secure. And now we're going to do a little bit of validation. So I'll say this, validation. We do have a validation module, folks. I'm going to say set rules. Now, event name has a label of event name as two words. I'm going to say it's required, and I'm going to just say min length of maybe 5, and I'm using these pipe symbols to separate each of the rules. So we'll have max length maybe 95, something like that, okay? So validation again, so this validation set rule. Now, by the way, if we go to the reference guide here, go to included modules, the validation module, and of course it's set rules. So that was today's deliberate mistake of the day. So it's set rules, and we're going to say event location. Okay, now I'll say that this one is required, and I'll say that it's also just a maximum length of 95. All right, now I'm showing you the reference guide here just to show you where you can look at all of these different things that are available. So here they are here. You can see they're all fully documented, and do feel free to check that out if you want, okay? And there's examples as well. We do have some pretty good documentation, if I say so myself. Okay, so that's how that's going to go. Now, let's do the third one. So validation, set rules. This is going to be event start. Okay. So this one is going to be required. I'll do a little pipe symbol. And I want to make sure that it's a valid date time local value. So if you look at the reference guide here, you'll see a little thing that says valid date time local, and I'm just going to paste this in. Okay, so that's all of the validation rules, and 3 cheers for us. Now inside this validation module, there's another method called run. And again, I'm just showing you the reference guide here. And this is going to run all of the validation rules, and it's going to return true or false. So I'm going to say result is this, validation, run. Now keep in mind, it's always going to be true or false. And I'm going to say if the result is true, well, let's just echo well done. Otherwise, well, that means that there's validation errors. So if that happens, I'm going to present the form again. So I'm going to just load up, create again. And then the form's going to get displayed. And on the form, I'm going to have some validation errors. Now, you can just go upstairs and echo validation errors, something like that. So if I just take you back here and I'll hit submit, you can see that we've got validation errors here. Now, if you want fancy inline validation errors, you can do that as well. But I'm going to just move forward if that's okay, because I want to show you something to do with this pop-up calendar here. Let's get a situation where everything's filled out perfectly. So I'm going to say first event. I'll say event location is London. I've got a date and I'm going to submit, okay? Now you can see that it says well done. Let's do something a little bit more interesting. I'm going to JSON post. And this is going to give us a summary of all of the posted fields here. So there we go. Now you can see that we've got an event name. There's no surprises there. You can see that we've got a location. I'll just skip to this one. This is the submit button. And here's a little cross-site request forgery token. It's just a little bit of security that's being added, and we don't need to worry about this, okay? But the thing I really want to show you is event start. Remember how I was saying that the pop-up calendar will adjust to whatever date and time format is appropriate for you. It's a beautiful thing, okay? But the really nice thing is, regardless of where you may be, the date and time is always going to be posted in this format. This is called the ISO format. And again, it's really going to make life easier for us, okay? So let's have a little think about this. If everything goes okay, we're going to say data is this model get data from post. Now remember, we've already got get data from post and everything is fine. So now we can say, let's get the update ID again actually. So the update ID is segment 3, an integer. And I'm going to say if the update ID is equivalent to 0, then we're going to insert a new record. But if it's not equivalent to 0, we're going to update an existing record. That's how it's going to work, okay? Now, to insert a record, it's really easy. We're just going to load DB, which is a module that comes with the framework. I'm going to say insert this data into events. As simple as that, okay? To update, again, I'm going to load up the DB module. Now, there's no need to say modules load or anything. Trongate 2 is really, really fast and easy. I'm just going to call update. I'm going to pass in the update ID. I'm going to pass in the data. And then I'm going to pass in the table name. Events, okay? So, pretty cool. But beware. Because as much as this is a nice sort of format, it's not quite the same as the date time format for MySQL. So we're going to have to do a little bit of conversion, and I know that everybody's like, oh, when does it end? But stay cool. It's the docs to the rescue. Because if you look here at the section on datetime local, I've got a best practices. And it says the following helper functions handle bidirectional conversion between MySQL and the datetime local HTML input. So just a couple of functions. I'm going to just copy them. And I'm going to take them to the model file here. So paste in. I'll add a couple of little public things here. And I do hope that you can see what these are doing. In our case, we want to convert datetime local to MySQL. So it's this one here, right? And what I'm going to do is, as soon as we've fetched the data, I'm going to say data event start is this model, and then datetime local to MySQL. And I'm going to pass in the event start. Now, let me show you exactly what that does. I'm saying JSON so that I can see the stuff. And this true, that just adds a die statement, okay? So check this out. I want you to look very closely at this event start, okay? And watch how it changes when we refresh. See how it's changed? There you go. So that was our datetime local being converted to a MySQL friendly format, okay? So now everything else is kind of easy. I'll set some flash data and I'll say the event was successfully created, and then we'll have some flash data for the update thing. So the event was successfully updated, and finally we're going to redirect to events/manage. Okay. Now, on our manage view file here, where we've got this little space here, I'm going to just echo flash data with parenthesis. So that's going to display the flash message, okay? So, shall we dance? Well, let's give it a try. So, first of all, we'll have a little validation error. That's okay. Now, I'm going to just say first event, location is going to be London, and I'll just choose some date here, whatever, and submit. As you can see, it says the event was successfully created. If you have a look at the database table, there's the event, and everything is fantasticola. By the way, if we hit refresh, that's going to disappear. I'm going to just create a second event just to show you again. So this is in New York, this one. Choose anything. You can, remember, you can change years and everything. It's all here. And there you go. So now we've got 2 events on the database table. So, wouldn't it be nice if we could look at the events? Well, that's what's coming up. Now, this JSON thing that I've showed you a couple of times is really useful because it can show us what has been passed into the view file. So if we just echo with short tags JSON data and refresh, here's all of the stuff that was passed into this view file, and there's our events. There they are. As a little reminder, when we started off, we built this manage method here, and we built get events. And get events is up here. It queries the database, right, and returns them. And there they are. So it's an array. It's actually an array of objects, by the way. But there you go. Now, on our manage file here, I'm going to have a little if statement. I'm going to say if empty events, then I'll just say return. So if there's no events, the page will just stop here. It will not be a die statement, but it means that we're going to have a page that looks like this if there's no events, okay? However, if we do have events, then we're going to have a little table with a little table heading, a table row with 4 of these little beauties, and I'm going to say event name, event location. Let's have event start, and finally I'll just say action. Okay, all right, now let's paste here and we'll have a little T body section for the table body, and I'll change these into TD cells, right? So we've got a little table here. Now if we save and refresh, there's the table. And so the goal now is to loop through the events. Now there's no template engine here because remember folks, PHP is a templating engine, right? This is native PHP. So we're going to say for each events as event. So something like that. And then we'll close off this loop thing here. Looks pretty good. So if we save and refresh, you know that we've got 2 rows, and we can see that we've got 2 rows here. I'll zoom you in a wee bit. Okay, so let's populate these things. Now for the event name, I'm going to echo out event, loading up event name. And there you go. So first event, second event. Next, we're going to get the event location. I'm going to echo out event, loading up event location. So something like that. Now, all this out thing does is it makes any potentially dangerous characters safe. So if somebody was to submit, let's say you've got a discussion forum and somebody submits JavaScript, that could be dangerous, right? So this out thing, it just makes the stuff safe. We don't really need it here, but it's a good practice for fields like this and this. Now, event start, we won't need out for that. I'm just going to echo event, loading up, event start. Am I the only person who says loading up for this? I don't even know if that's the right phrase, but it works for me. So here you go, and there is the event start. Now, lastly, let me go to this action, and I'm going to say class is text center. And how about if we just build a little link here? So I'll echo anchor, events, create, and let's just pass in event ID, and I'll just say edit. Okay. So there you go. And of course, if you want to make that a button, you know how to do that by now, right? So there we go, and 3 cheers for us. Of course, you can see the challenge we've got here, right? We've got this crazy thing going on, and it doesn't look too good actually. So let me do a little bit of work on get events, and I'm going to see if I can make this look nice. So events, right? I'm going to just JSON events so we can really focus on this for a minute. So it's an array, and it's actually an array of key value pairs. So I'm going to say for each events as key is assigned to value. Now, if I echo the key in a die statement, it says 0, but nevertheless, it is a key, right? And we can say event start is value. I'm going to say loading up event start. And if we echo this with a die statement, this is the kind of thing that's coming from the database. Now, our job is to turn the event start into something nice. And to do that, I'm going to create a date time object. So I'm going to say event start object is new date time. And I'm going to pass in the event start. Okay. Now, if you've done any OOP, maybe even just a few tutorials, you may recognize this. This is the syntax we use when we are initializing or using a class. And it turns out that PHP has got a built-in class called the datetime class. I'm just showing you the PHP user guide here. And that's exactly what we're using here, right? So we're going to create what's called a datetime object. Now, if I JSON event start object, and I'll say comma true, then you'll see that we've now got this object here. So it turns out that this datetime class, which comes with PHP, it's part of the PHP language, well, it contains a method by the name of format. Now, I know that the PHP docs can be a little bit difficult to look at. I mean, let's be honest, it's not much fun. But if you look really closely, you can see a thing here that says format, right? And if we click on it, it takes us to this page with a whole bunch of stuff here to do with how we can represent stuff. Now, if you've ever worked with the PHP date function, you may have referenced this or seen this before. But if not, hang tough, because I'll show you how this works. I'm going to say events with a key of key, and then I'm going to say that the event start, it's going to be, you know what, I think I need to look this up. Okay, that's where it's going to be. So it's going to be, pardon me, the event start object, and we're calling upon format. And inside here, we're going to add all of the little bits and pieces that will give us the date in a nice format. And I'll give you a laugh. I actually couldn't remember this because for a long time I was working with Unix timestamps. But strangely enough, I can remember this stuff. It would be, let's see, LJS FY at couple of backslashes H:I. All right. Now, if you're saying, how did you remember all of that? Well, I have a video on YouTube, how to remember this stuff in 15 minutes. You go through it one time, you'll never have to look it up again. But let me just do a little JSON on the events here. And hopefully, well, there it is. As you can see, this has been formatted nicely. Now you can change it to any format that you want. It's just a case of referencing the docs here and choosing the options that work for you. But I'm going to go with this, okay? So now let me just refresh this page here. And now our event start looks fantastic. Okay. So let me look at editing events. So we've clicked in. Now you can see that the headline has changed. That's kind of nice. But we've got a few errors here. So let's have a look at this. Now, we're on the create method here. And you can see that we've said if blah, 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 get data from post. But I'm going to add a little else statement here, and I'm going to say record object is this model get, let's just say get event, and we'll pass in the update ID. So I'll have a little method inside the model here, anywhere you want. It's going to be called get event, takes in an update ID, and I'm going to just say event object. I'm just writing this underscore obj to let you know that it's an object, okay? So it's going to be this db, and I'm going to say get where. Now I'll pass in the update ID, and I'll pass in the name of the table. And indeed, let me just do var dump on this event object here. So you can see that it is indeed an object. But by the way, if we have an invalid ID, let me chuck in an invalid ID, like 88, well then it returns false, okay? So that is going to return an object or false. That's how it works, right? Now, let's return the event object. I'm going to just say false if not found. Okay, so that's going to return the event object to this thing here. Now, let's just say that if the record object is false, do you know what? I think I'll just redirect. So let me just redirect to events / not found. We'll just do this nice and easy, right? So I'll quickly build a little public method here for not found. And it's going to be super simple. I'm just going to say view module is assigned to events. View file is assigned to not found. And then I'll load up templates admin, pass in the data. Now before I forget, I'll just add the security here. And now you can see, whoops, line 45. Okay, just a little semicolon. All right, so you can see that it's looking for a view file called not found. So into the views directory, it's not found.php. And I'll just do something like this. And I'm going to say not found. And I'll say the record that you're looking for is gone. Gone, gone, gone. All right. Maybe not. Anyway. Or maybe it never existed in the first place. Okay. So we've now got a not found page here. And of course, you can add a little link that takes you back to return to manage events. Something like that. And of course, you can turn it into a button. So it's an array with a class of button alt. Okay, oops. Events plural manage. Okay, so can we get this right? There we go. So if we edit, everything is cool. If we do an invalid ID, it's taking us to this not found page, and that's all fine. By the way, on the not found, you can also, if you want to be really proper, you don't have to do this, but you can say HTTP response code 404, and it's going to send an HTTP response status code. You don't need to, but you can, okay? Now, let's go up here and we'll figure out what's happening when somebody's updating. So we've dealt with the record object thing here. We know that if it's false, we're going to redirect the user. But if that's not the case, then I'm going to say data is, now let's say it's an array of the record object. So I'm just going to do a little JSON on the data here. And you can see that we now have everything being read from the database. And it's all fantastic. But beware, we actually are going to have to use this to convert it from a MySQL type of format to the date-time local format, okay? So let me just zoom you out a wee bit. And we're going to say data event start is this model and where on earth is it? It's here we go, MySQL to date time local. There we go, and we're passing in event start. Okay, so there it is. And now everything is beautiful. I'm going to change the location from New York to Paris. I'm going to change the date to, let's just go with July sometime. And I'll change the title to second event updated. I'm not anticipating any problems with this. I think this will work. There you go. And there is our second event all updated. And everything is fine. Now, shall we do the delete process? Okay, I'm going to say data update ID is actually it's our update ID. So we're going to pass the update ID into the create thing here. Okay. Now, as a reminder, we can say JSON data, and it's showing us all of the stuff that we've got. And one of these things is update ID. So, how do we do this? Well, let's just have an if statement. If update ID is greater than 0, then, so it's going to go to events confirm delete, and then we'll pass in the update ID and we'll say delete. I'm going to have an array with a class of button danger. All right. So when we click this, it's taking us to this confirm delete thing. I'll do this as fast as my little fingers will go. So it's going to be confirm delete. Once again, I'll say that the update ID is segment 3. Of course, we're going to call upon Trongate security here. Okay. And I'm going to say that the record object is this model. And once again, from the events model, I'm going to call get event. So get event, I'm passing in the update ID. Now, again, we know that this is going to be true or false. So if the record object is false, I'm going to redirect to events not found. But if everything is okay, then I'll just say data update ID is update ID. Actually, shall we write it this way? Do it whatever way makes you feel good. But I'll do it this way. So the update ID is the update ID. The view module is events. And the view file is confirm delete. All right. So now we load up templates, admin, and I'm going to pass in the data here. Okay. And now we're going to super quickly create this view file, confirm delete, and I'll have a little bit of whoops, what on earth is that? Okay, I'm going to have an H1 and a little bit of HTML, right? So I'll just say, are you sure? There we go. Now let me have a card with a card heading. I'm going to give the card heading a class of danger. And I'm going to say confirm delete. There we go. Then I'm going to have a card body. And we're going to have a form. I'm going to echo form open, events, submit, delete, and then a form close. And then in here, remember that we passed in our update ID. If I say form input, update ID, and then show you the update ID. Okay, what did I get there? There we go. You can see it's 2 in this case, right? And then, by the way, the real trick is that we say form hidden. Aha! So it's hidden, but we happen to know that it's there, okay? So once again, let's do the little thing with the divs and whatnot and the buttons. I'm just going to copy this for speed. And then paste in. We can simplify a little bit. Okay, so that's giving us something like that. Now, just a couple of changes. If we cancel, then we're going to go to events, create with the update ID. Okay, so if somebody cancels, it goes back here. But if they're going to delete, it's going to say delete now. And we're going to have a class of danger. That's how that's going to work. Okay, and I think that's about it. So when we click on cancel, it takes us back, but when we submit, it's taking us to events, submit, delete. So here we go for the last time. And again, you can, well, actually, we know that the update ID is post update ID. Okay, so if we just var dump this update ID here, you can see that there it is. And unfortunately, with HTML being what it is, it's coming across here as a string. So what we're going to do, we can set it to an integer like this. So now it's an integer. And then I'm just going to, of course, let's make this safe, this endpoint. And then I'm going to just say this, db delete. So it's this update ID and it's from events. Simple as that. And then I'm just going to say set flash data. The event was successfully deleted. And finally, we redirect to events manage. Okay, so here we go, here we go. I'll just, since it's the finale, I will create a third event. And I'll go to Rome for this one. Just going to hit submit. So there's our events, okay? And if we want to delete one of them, you would just, by the way, you can add in, I should probably do this. Let's say you are about to delete a record. This cannot be undone. I'm just trying to make it so that it's difficult to do this by accident, you know? I suppose you could center this. All right. So if they press delete, the event was deleted, all is well, and that is the end of this tutorial. Now, one more thing I just want to show you just before we finish. You can see that we're doing a lot of Trongate security make sure allowed over and over and over again. Now, if you want to be super fancy, you can add a constructor. So, a constructor, that looks ghastly. A constructor is a special function that gets invoked as soon as a class gets called. So this is the syntax for having a constructor, at least with Trongate. And what we can do is take this make sure allowed and chuck it in here. And that means that whenever these methods run, we can take this out. And so it's, let me just make sure I've got them all. I think I've just about got it. Hold on. Yeah, I think that's about it. So it means that we can remove all of those make sure allows and just have it in one place here. Oops, I almost forgot this one. And it might be something to do, you know, it's up to you. So let's have another third event again. And I'll have this in Glasgow again. I'll go like this, submit. Okay, looks good. Now, just before we wrap up, everything we've been doing here is being done by hand, but the one thing that I am going to get a little bit of help with is getting doc blocks. Block docs, I've said. I meant to say doc blocks. So I have a little request. Can you please add doc blocks, it should say, type hinting and return types to this PHP class. And what I've done is I've just pasted it in to ChatGPT, and then I did the same for the model, and here's the result. So it's just adding in these doc blocks here. We've got things like return types, type hinting and stuff. I noticed this in the edit, by the way. I should say comma int here. Now it will not break if we forget that, but I'll just add it to be all proper. And here is the model file. Okay, so adding in these doc blocks, here's our type hinting here, here's the return types. It's just one of these things that AI is probably always going to be able to do better than me. Okay, so that'll be the end of this tutorial. Thank you so much for hanging out with me here, and hopefully I'll see you again soon. Cheers!